Welcome to the Awakening Podcast. You can find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org, where we open our minds to deeper layers of truth, the ones often hidden behind the surface of everyday life. Today's topic takes us literally beneath the surface to the ground beneath our feet. We often think of nature as pure healing and life giving, but what if parts of the earth could make us sick? My guest, Norbert Heuser, has spent more than 17 years researching a phenomenon few people, even doctors, have ever heard: geopathic radiation. From the Greek geo meaning earth and pathic meaning illness, it describes natural energy fields of radiation zones that can disturb the body's balance and, according to Norbert, may even trigger cancer. Today, we explore what geopathic radiation is, how it affects our health, and what can be done to protect ourselves from these unseen natural forces. So, if you've ever felt drained, restless, or ill in certain places, this conversation may hold the key to why. And just before we get into the conversation, I've had some fantastic conversations with Norbert, and I'll have the links for all the shows. But we discussed, are you addicted to coffee? We had another one, cell phones, health, dangerous addictions, and the one after that was the health dangers of Wi-Fi. Please welcome back to the show, Norbert.
Good day, my friend. Thanks, Roy, for having me. It's good to be back.
No, it's always a pleasure and thoroughly enjoy it. And those that might be new, I thoroughly encourage you to go back to the previous ones. But what I love, and you should, if you're on Spotify, just listening, I have the video on Spotify, we're on BitChute, YouTube, and Rumble, and I'd encourage you to go in and listen to the show because Norbert has a fantastic way of educating us to what's going on in the world, but he does it also through images that help us doing it. So I suppose let what exactly does it mean? Because I mean, first time I heard about it.
Well, of course, people don't know about it. It's widely unknown. I came across it about 45 years ago. Um, 45 years ago, I came across that we have on the Earth what is called geopathic radiation. Now, the Earth has a condition, and a lot of people glorify Mother Earth, Mother Nature, because they always think, well, Mother Nature is good, right? It's healthy. Well, that's only partially true. I mean, if you consider that we have things on this earth which are not healthy, and one of them is geopathic radiation, and as I will lay out in the show, is for me the secret cause for cancer. Why is it secret? Because the vast majority in the medical world does not know about it or ignores it. But I will offer you truth and evidence about this. Now, Mother Nature is not always healthy. Think about volcanoes. Think about quicksand. Think about venomous snakes. Think about grizzly bears. These are all animals, things, actions, activities, parts of our natural Mother Earth, which can be very harmful. Earthquakes, tsunamis. So we shouldn't glorify Mother Earth that everything is totally cool. It's not. There's just certain things you have to be aware of. Like you're aware of a grizzly bear, well, you shouldn't get close to him, right? Uh, so you got to be aware of. Being aware of a problem is always half the solution. Very simple. So, as you said, geo means earth and pathic means illness or suffering. So, in other words, when the earth makes us suffer, imagine you have man-made electromagnetic radiation, which we discussed in the last show, like cell phones, Wi-Fi, GPS, and so on and so forth. These are man-made electromagnetic radiation. And then we have electromagnetic radiation, which comes from the Earth. And the reasons for these are very prehistoric. as in the prehistoric world, when the earth was formed, it was done in a lot of very different situations, which created rock fractures, rock falls, earth rays, earth radiation, terrestrial radiation. So you have radiation coming out of the earth, you have radiation coming out of the terrestrial area. These are harmful electrical charges, as I explained here. Terrestrial radiation exists everywhere on Earth. Scientists maintain that this radiation is a consequence of radioactive elements left over from the Earth formation. The decay of these elements produces gases, like radon, for example, leaks continuously from the ground and can be easily inhaled. So, and these radiations, we have earth formations, we have rock fractures. This is a huge rock fracture, but there are many, many small ones. But through these fractures emanate these radiations from the ground, from the earth. And if people have what you call a nice kitchen, you have the countertops, and people are very proud, the woman of the house very proud if she has countertops made from granite as a proof of, we're well off. We can afford to have them from granite, not from wood or plastic. Well, little do they know that these granite kitchen countertops are highly radiated. So they exposed themselves to a highly unhealthy radiation by having these countertops. I took measurement tools and I went to granite stores and I measured them. You know, they're highly radiated.
And it stays in it. It's
Yeah.
well, never heard of it.
Well, it's over billions of years.
Yeah.
When the Earth was created through whatever technical and physical upsets, right? In the same token, we are living here on this planet, and we have what we call a natural radiation on our planet. We live with all the time. And the human body has been developed on this basis and deals with it. Now, I took the liberty some years ago, and I took what is called a Geiger counter, which counts the radiation, Geiger meter or Geiger counter. I'm sure if nowadays I would go on the airplane with the Geiger counter, they would escort me with machine guns out of the plane again. But at this time, I got away with it, and I did it. And I measured that the radiation in the airplane is up to 30, 40 times higher than on the ground where we're born and raised with. A radiation 30, 40 times higher. Now, I'm not sure you heard about that. If you break down the cancer rates by professions, that airline pilots have one of the highest cancer rates in the world. And the airline industry, they are aware of that, not only the pilots, but as well the staff on an airplane are very high in risks of illnesses because of the high exposure of radiation. So I wanted to know, I wanted to find out. So I took the measurements. 30 to 40 times higher than on the ground.
I want to ask you something now that you've mentioned this, because with planes, I've always kind of seen that loads of people get ill, and then I always thought it was the circulation of the air because the filters. I mean, I've even seen Procter and Gamble; they don't change their filters, so I don't think the filters on the plane were changed. So I was thinking, was it that? And I used to always turn off the air. Then, not so long ago, somebody had went around and checked the frequencies in the airport, and they were off the charts. We talked on the previous one about in hospitals and everything. Airports were terrible. And I was thinking, is that what's making us ill? But listening to what you've just said now, it seems like the actual radiation in the sky is what people are actually
Sure,
is that?
sure. And of course, it destroys our DNA. Okay. Okay. So There is in Germany an organization called Cockpit. It's a kind of federation of the airline industry, kind of administrative office, right? And I wrote to them that I have a solution for the problem, and I would like to demonstrate, to offer it to them, to show it, to demonstrate it, that it would solve the problem in the airplanes. And they never answered. They never answered. So that's the radiation, right? We have a natural, the bottom line is we have a natural occurring radiation all over the planet, which we're born and raised with. And then we have things like granite kitchen tops. The granite from the Earth formation was formed, had these radiations, and they're stored in the granite for thousands of millions of years. Okay. Now, if a woman in a household cooks and cuts the food and meat on the granite countertops and sits on it and has a conversation and
Puts the baby on it.
yeah. So that's what it is, okay? All right. So it's a natural occurring phenomenon. However, we will learn that there are certain things you have to know and you can do to control it and what to do with it. So the first thing we talk about then, after I gave you the basic introduction, is something which is called grids. Geopathic radiation and grids. You must imagine that around the planet, we have grids running around the planet like a chessboard. Very regular. You can compare it like a chessboard. It's a repetitive pattern which is there all the time. Now, depending on who discovered certain of these grids, there is a Dr. Manfred Curry, a German guy. He discovered what he called the Curry grids. And there is Dr. Ernst Hartmann, another German. He discovered a second different pattern of grids. Now, what are these grids? These grids are these patterns which run around the world like a chessboard, and their wavelength is like 3 meters or 4 to 5 meters. So every 3 meters or every 4 or 5 meters, depending on which grid, these chessboard patterns repeat. They're repetitive all around the world, and they're called grids. Now here you see a photo I took with my 2 grandsons where we measured those grids in the living room and we marked them, these fields. Now, what is this all about? This is all about something that wherever these lines are, they harm your body. And whenever they meet in a cross section, they harm the body big time, more intense. And what you should do is you should avoid to have places you dwell for a long time, like your bed, like your couch, like the TV recliner, like your office table. So places where you stay an extended amount of time should not be in such a line, or especially not in a crossing. The line is harmful, the crossing is very harmful. When I became aware of this 45 years ago, I had my house tested. Do you know what a dowser is?
I've heard of dosing with the sticks, isn't it? Where for
Yes.
what? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. A dowser is a person who takes wooden sticks, branches, or metal, copper, and it looks of kind like that. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Now.
No, Stereo.
Okay. So you see this gentleman there back in the Middle Ages, and he has these wooden branches. They look like a fork, and he walks around places And depending on how these move, he knows that here is water. They use them to detect water veins, water wells. Here's another image, right? So these are called dowsers and dowsing rods, which you use primarily to detect water, which we talk about in a minute. So back again to the dowsers. So do you have these radiations can be detected with a dowsing rod. People who are good in it detect it with a dowsing rod. So I took a dowsing rod with my grandsons and we measured, as I said, our living room. And now here I could show the patterns of what I just explained, what I showed, these grids, right? You see the patterns, how repetitive they are, right? You can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, the philosophy is very simple. You should avoid that your places you dwell for an extended amount of time to be in such a cross-section. Significantly, your bed, most of all, because you typically sleep 6, 8 hours in this location. Your office chair, the living room couch, and so on, where you dwell an exact amount of time more than regular. If you stay in such a section for a minute or two or three or five, that's okay. But not if you sleep such in a section for 10, 20 years. And we dive deeper into that as we go along. Good. Now, the next thing we talk about is not the grids, but what is called water veins. So as these grids run around our planet with these Banker, Curry grid, and Hartmann grid, so we have around the world water veins. Water veins are water rivers, so to speak, which run underground. And these water veins underground, they are more dangerous than the grids. So imagine you have a water vein underground, and they can be small, they can be like rivers between 50 feet and 1,000 feet, means 10, 15 meters to 300 meters around under the floor. You don't see them, they're under the ground. And this is what they can look like. And they rush in more or less high speeds underground, and they create electromagnetic radiation through the friction of them running underground, crossing and rubbing under rocks. They create electromagnetic radiation. And this electromagnetic radiation is more dangerous than Wi-Fi and is more dangerous than regular grids. Here I have some explanation for you to read. And of course, this is widely not known. Good dowsers, of course, know that. And some people in alternative medical field are aware of this as well, but they're not too many. So as the cross sections of the regular grids are dangerous, the cross sections and the lines of underwater veins are the most dangerous of all. Any questions?
Well, I'm just curious because I know they still use the dowsing today. Even in Ireland, I've seen where they're going along. Is it that when it's getting the cross where they're meeting the back, is it that it goes up? Because usually it's when they find the water to drill for the water that it points down. But do you know
Yeah.
how it actually operates with?
Well, they're different. Again, they're different frequencies. The grids we saw react differently than the water, and the water is more intense. And it was in old times that people wanted to find water to dig a fountain, a well, to find water for their supply, right? But in old times, they knew as well that these places are dangerous. You'll see it in a minute. These places can be dangerous. But the idea is that there exist fields. These fields are dangerous. They're electromagnetic radiation. They're dangerous and harmful and create illness. And this is why they're called geopathic radiations. Geo, earth, pathic, radiation, illness. So now the human being acts differently, but funny enough, there are geopathic radiations and animals. Animals react very intensively about these radiations. The interesting fact is that some animals like it and some don't like it. In the old times, they took pigs and had them run across a field. And where these pigs would lay down, there was no radiation. Because pigs would not lay down where there's a radiation. So there are certain animals who avoid radiation and some animals who like them. Like storks would not build their nest where there is a radiation. They hate it. They don't want it. So people knew where there were storks, there was no radiation. Where there was pigs, there was no radiation. So they will then typically build their home where the pigs laid down because they know there was no radiation. And that was in the old times, they knew that. So animals, on my website, there are more pages, information. There's too much here. I have a complete list of animals, what animals like, which animals like the radiation and which animals don't like the radiation. For example, cats love the radiation. So if you have a cat, which typically comes along with you when you go to bed at nighttime to sleep and she crawls somewhere next to you, blah, 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 that's pretty normal. But if at daytime, when you're not in the bed, the cat goes to that location to stay there for an amount of time, you can swear by God that this place is radiated. Because cats want radiation. They need it. Then there are animals like bees. A natural beehive, bees only build it in nature where there is radiation. Bees and ants need radiation. There are few animals who need the radiation, and there are certain animals who move away from the radiation. So if you know the patterns of these animals, who loves and who not loves, typically, unless they're totally degenerated, they act normal. And you can tell by the behavior, there is radiation, there's no radiation. So in the animal world, if you can read the animal world, you already know which animals can help you to detect radiation. So that's not a new thing. That's old knowledge, which has been not really taught in nowadays schools, does it?
I mean, they're not teaching us a lot of the things that we need to know. So it's you mentioned at the start about the radon. I know I'm kind of going off a little just for a second, but
No,
I
don't worry.
remember I remember in Ireland that was always a big thing for construction and everything. That if there was radon, I think it was like a plastic layer they were on. Whether that was helping, I haven't heard much about that here in Poland, but in Ireland it was a big thing about the radon gases.
Yeah. So, and then there is another issue besides animals. We have plants, and plants can react very naturally to radiation. So there are plants which love, again, radiation, and which grow very much so if there's a radiation going on. And then there are plants who refuse these radiations. And very often, if you have the woman of the house, she's very unhappy because whatever she does, the plant does not grow. It dies. Oh, I give it all the water and all the vitamins and all the nutrition, and the plant dies all the time. Well, you can almost guarantee that she has a location where the plant is sabotaged by electromagnetic geopathic radiation. And this is what we call a cancer tree. If a tree grows in such a radiated environment, it develops what we call cancer tree, which is a sign that the tree is suffering and will sooner or later die because of the radiation. This is natural radiation, geopathic radiation. Now, then we talk about mankind. The fact is that basically mankind refuses radiation and suffers. People cannot live with radiation. And there was a famous case. I don't know whether you ever heard about Paracelsus, a Swiss. They call him the father of toxicology. No. And he had a phrase. He said, there's poison in everything. Only the dose makes a thing, not a poison. And they call him the Swiss father of toxicology. So you can have poison to a certain amount, certain intensity level, and the intensity level decides the radiation. All right, so we have a natural electromagnetic field in our bodies, which is 80 microwatts per square meter, which is healthy, which we need. Our body cannot live without electricity. We need electricity for our hearts, for our organs, for our brain, but it's a very modest, low-level electricity. What happens is that this geopathic radiation is much more intense than our natural radiation. So it overrules our body's law of survival. It's like every regular poison. If you give your body poison, this poison will dominate your body's health, right? Because it overrules your natural immunity system. So the electromagnetic radiation, which is created by geopathic zones, geopathic radiation, is stronger than your body's level of a healthy radiation. You have a natural electromagnetic radiation in your body, and it's overrun by geopathic radiation. This is just the way it is. Now, we talked about these dowsers, right? A few minutes ago. Let me refresh again these dowsers, what they looked like in the old times. So people were aware of these phenomena, but people forgot sometimes knowledge. Knowledge was forgotten. When the Romans conquered Middle Europe and like Germany and so on, France, they brought along the tradition, the new tradition of taking a bath, which at this time local people had no idea about taking a bath and sitting in a pool. And the Romans brought this culture into Germany and so neighboring countries. And once the Romans left the area, their ruling government was gone. What happened was that people forgot about taking a bath. They just forgot about it. And taking a bath faded out. So sometimes there's knowledge in the world and people forget about this knowledge. People forget about this knowledge. Here was now a famous case in 1929, and I called this show as well the electromagnetic radiation natural electromagnetic radiation as the secret cause of cancer. Why do I call it the secret cause of cancer? Because the majority of people do not know. And the main part of my show is now, after I've prepared a bit the general theme and the theory behind it, there was a famous case in 1929 in Germany. In the Bavarian city of Vilsbiburg, they had, in a small town of 3,000 people, they had an enormous amount of cancer cases, 53 cancer cases, which was at this time, 1929, for a small town of 3,000 people, astronomically. And there was a famous dowser called Baron Gustav von Pohl. He was very, very, very famous of being an excellent dowser. And Gustav von Pohl was hired by the city. The city asked him to come to their town and find out what is going on. So he came in 1929 to the city, and he was not allowed to talk to anybody in the city about what's going on. They just told him, we have cancer cases. We would like you to find out what's going on. He was not allowed to talk to any person about anything. They wanted to have a study, and they had people accompanying him through town. And with his dowsing rod, he went to every house and he tested every bed in every house. Because his philosophy was, when people sleep for years in a place, in a bed where there is geopathic radiation, the people will die of cancer. That was his philosophy and his findings. So he entered those properties. The entire village was informed. They opened up their doors. He walked in. He tested every bed position to find out, is there a person who died in this bed, supposedly? And from all these 54 people who died, he nailed down every single bed in every house. In this bed, somebody died. In this bed, nobody died. In this bed, somebody died. In this bed, nobody died. So he went through all the properties and measured them with his rod. And to 100% accurate quote, he could pinpoint where people died because of geopathic radiation. And he created a map from Vilsbiburg, which is, of course, looks very black, and there are a lot of lines and so on. These lines he drew in there were the water veins he found. Because again, water veins are much more dangerous and harmful than the regular grids. The electromagnetic radiation water veins create are devastating. And I've never seen in my lifetime a location which had so many water veins. Now, for your better understanding, I redrew this map and put the black lines he did all in blue, which were the water veins. Now you can see how many water veins, what intensity level there were. I've never seen it. He's never seen it. And that was the miracle why so many people died in this town of cancer, because they were sleeping for years on end in their bed above water veins and crossings. Any questions so far?
I'm just curious. Is that city still around? Has it expanded? And is there a higher rate of cancer in that area?
I must tell you that I was not able, I moved to America after I discovered that. It's a very interesting question, which needs to be followed up. I don't know whether somebody followed up. What I know is that Gustav von Pohl wrote a book about it in 1929. And this book is available nowadays, both in English and in German. In German, it's pretty simple and easy at Amazon. In English, it's a bit harder to find and much more expensive. But I can tell you that everybody who has a certain interest in health and in cancer, and every doctor, it's a must to read this book. It's a must to read this book. He explains it. At this time, all this happened, it became very known in the media. It went so far, articles across the country, but shortly after again, the interest died. It went so far that they contacted Max Planck, who is a German scientist, a friend of Einstein, and as basically famous and important as Einstein. And Max Planck was the guy who discovered quantum physics. And this is what Max Planck wrote when they approached him about this case. They approached him and said, "Hey, Mr. Planck, this is going on. How do you feel about this?" And this is what he answered. You know that certain questions, such as those of the earth rays and the dowsing rods, quite excite the mind. Unfortunately, a bad business interest often creeps into the public debate on these issues. One should therefore build in the Emperor Wilhelm Society a research institute for it, in order to clean up public life. It really needs it enough, and clarify questions that only can be clarified with the means of pure science. We have just enough gallantry. So he said, look, guys, you got to look into this. You got to do something about it. I can't do it, but somebody should. So short time after, all this vanished. All this vanished from the face of the earth. And you had a good question, which I have to follow up. I never thought about this. What has the city done about it? The easiest way would be, of course, if they buy my products and put them in the village and the problem is done. I don't know. Good question. Now, there is another person, Dr. Otto Bergsmann, University of Vienna. He wrote a book, The Risk Factor to Health is the Location. So whether you become sick or not could be a question of the location where you live. And he was a dowser, and he wrote a book which, unfortunately, to my knowledge so far, only exists in German. I tried to find it in English. It doesn't exist. Seems not to exist. Here is a drawing I want to show you he came up with. So he took in the university a study room, an experimental room, and you see there a green circle and the number 1. Yeah. This is a workspace in the office, in the laboratory, where somebody worked, and he was not in a geopathic zone and a geopathic radiation. The number 1 is green, he's fine. Only 3 meters across his room, number 2 guy became sick, and I believe developed cancer as well. This is number 2. Only 3 meters away, 10 feet, this guy became sick. And he says, look, it's to become sick, it's the question of where you stay, where you dwell, not how you treat your body. So the location can make a decision whether you become sick or not. Here I have an example I want to show you in the practical world how that looks like. In the practical world, you have a house here, and you see in blue the water veins running in this area. You see from the back top right coming a water vein down, and it has a cross section back there. And I wrote there lightning on zone cross. Now, if a lightning hits the ground, you can almost guarantee that there is a water vein section crossing. The attraction of this crossing, the electromagnetic radiation, is so big that it attracts a lightning. So you can generalize this and say, in most or all the cases, or in most of the cases where lightning hits the ground, there is an intersection of water vein. Now then, the water vein comes from this area, goes down, passes the tree. Now the tree, you see the tree cancer, like I showed before. Then the water veins crosses the street. Now here is a very interesting phenomenon. You have police, sometimes they report accidents in a street. And they say we have no reason why there's an accident. There was no obstacle, there was no nothing. Why was there an accident? Well, in many cases, the accident happens across a water vein or water vein intersection, a crossing. Then you have here in the front a water vein which comes here from the right side, crosses a hedge, and the hedge has a damage in growth. The damage in growth cannot be fixed because whatever you cut the hedge and try to trim it, it doesn't go away. It keeps being there because the water vein is running through that hedge, of course, under the hedge in the ground. Now, then happens the classic thing that you have the water vein coming from the top here, from the side, from the back here, and it's crossing all in the bed, in that sleeping room of that person who then develops cancer. Does that make sense?
No, it does, yeah, yeah. And I had heard in Ireland there's a lot of talk about kind of fairy forts and stuff like that. And I'm just curious, is it possible to do with that? Because there was one, they built the motorway and they said it went through the fairy forts, but perhaps it had something like that. And there's a load of accidents by that area. Just that shouldn't be happening.
Okay, cool. That's a very clear confirmation of what I pointed out. Okay. There's no intellectual explanation. And the explanation is only because, in this case, of water veins and about the electromagnetic radiation, geopathic radiation, which is created there, which upsets the human body, which upsets plants, which upsets animals, and destroys part of their health. Here is a summary of such a situation in the modern world. You see here a building, and under the building is a water vein. And the water vein just runs right through the entire building, through all floors. So it's not just the ground floor. It just not stopped after 3-5 yards. It runs through the entire building. And on top of that, you have on the left side 5G towers penetrating the building and the area. You have in every room, which you can hardly realize now on the screen, you have in every room, you have cell phones, you have Wi-Fi transmitters, you have computers, you have cordless phones. So this is our modern lifestyle, that we have a penetration of all these man-made geopathic radiation, man-made electromagnetic radiation, and then on top we have here the geopathic radiation on top of everything, on top of all. Now, this is why I call it the secret cause of cancer. It's not totally secret. It's not totally secret. There were people in between who knew, who were aware. There is a British gentleman. His name is Rolf Gordon. He wrote a book, Cancer, the Full Menu. You can find it on the internet. I would highly recommend you to read it. Cancer, the Full Menu, where he talks about geopathic radiation. Or his book, Are You Sleeping in a Safe Place? ? Again, talking about geopathic radiation. Here is a statement from Dr. Arnold Mannlicher. He thinks that cancer is a disease of location. He wrote in a Swiss medical journal that in 30 years of practice, he has not yet found a case of cancer where there was not a geopathic influence. A medical doctor says that after 30 years in practice, that every cancer case he had a geopathic influence. Professor J. Grass recommended a change of bed position to those patients who did not respond to his medical therapy. So he said, okay, if you do your medical therapy and the patient doesn't become better, I bet you he has a geopathic radiation in his bed, and he will never become better if you don't change that. Dr. Rumbu says that a house built on neutral ground and still producing cancer does not exist. All these people confirm that my thesis, the secret cause of cancer, can be Mother Earth. It does not mean that geopathic radiation is alone. Of course, the man-made Wi-Fi create cancer. So cancer, in my philosophy, is the main reason caused by radiation, whether it's man-made radiation or whether it is natural radiation. There was a Dr. Hans Nieper, a controversial German physician known for his work in alternative cancer therapies. And our good friend, Nikola Tesla, already spoke about it. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, you got to think in energy, frequency, and vibration. Good. Question?
When the previous picture that you showed, where you had the 5G coming in and the building, is there ways of determining, even if it's a skyscraper, does it go up the whole way to kind of, I
Yeah,
don't know, kind of sky level?
yeah,
It does.
yeah, it does. So these radiations are so strong that the a wall, a floor is not an obstacle. A wall of floor is not an obstacle. Now, I just talked about this Dr. Hans Nieper. He was very controversial. He wrote a book, Revolution in Technology, Medicine, Society. And he says, according to studies I have initiated, that 92% of all cancer patients I have examined have remained for long periods of time, especially in respect to the sleeping place in geopathic stress zone. This Dr. Hans Nieper is reported, and I could not find a proof. I could only find what this English gentleman wrote in his book, that President Ronald Reagan was diagnosed with cancer in the 1970s. Dr. Nieper discovered that Reagan was sleeping in a very geopathic stressed place and ensured that his bed was moved into a geopathic-free place in the White House. So this Dr. Nieper seems to have saved the president from cancer. The treatment was so successful that Reagan went on to live for another 15 years and did not die of cancer. As no orthodox medicine was involved, the press in the USA was never allowed to report the reason for the success. Now, I cannot prove that from where I am, but it pretty much looks like it. Now, we have to come to a conclusion here about the situation. The conclusion is the problem: who has an interest to explain this to the public, like I do now to you? And I just scratched the surface. It would shake totally half of the medical world to its foundation and question. It's warning about what? Billions, trillions of donations to solve cancer have no results. They got nothing to show for. And if that, what I'm laying out here, is true for many cases, let's say of 20% of the cases, let's say 30% of the cases. If it's only responsible for 30% of the cases, wow, that's a number. But the medical world would have to admit they had no idea about it and had to change their procedure and forget about all their treatments. The second thing is, you develop illness sleeping in such a radiation zone, geopathic zone. Now, you develop cancer, they put you in hospital, and in hospital, you again may end up in a bed in a geopathic zone. Who cares? Who knows about it? Who takes this in consideration? Imagine that the children sitting in school and kindergarten all day long in a geopathic zone. Imagine the industry of properties, selling properties. Could you sell easily a property of which is known that is full of geopathic radiation? The property would not be sellable.
It's like, when you see a property with a pylon going, it's very hard to, unless a person does know, most people go, I don't want to be near that. So at least they can see that. They can't see the other thing. And that really affects the value of a property.
Yeah. So imagine this, what I'm saying here, becomes basic knowledge in our society. You would never buy a property without checking before the geopathic radiation, would you?
No, no.
And that would kill business, would it? You understand the point?
No, definitely, absolutely.
All right. So as you know me by now, I discovered this basically all 45 years ago. So I had to work on solutions. I had to do something about it. And as I said before, Nikola Tesla says, everything is energy, frequency, vibration. So working with his data, I discovered a new data, which apparently I couldn't find that he discovered it, but I discovered it. I'm not in competition with him, by God not. I discovered that all the frequencies of the world can be separated, grouped in two groups. Either a frequency is pro-survival with positive consequences, or counter-survival with negative consequences. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So when I test people about their food addictions, I test people about food addictions. I can have two groups of food after I tested them. One group are positive consequences. This is pro-survival food. Eat that. And one group of food is counter-survival frequencies. Don't eat these foods. These frequencies are bad for your survival. And after I developed this thesis and I developed my technology, which I introduced you the other day in other shows we've done, I said I have to develop a technology to protect you from these electromagnetic radiation. And I'm doing this by saying, okay, every electromagnetic radiation has parts of it which are bad. And these bad frequencies I must nullify. So if you have now geopathic radiation, parts of that geopathic radiations are -2. A frequency, let's call it just -2 to make it simple. If I now program in science, which is called quantum physics, if I program my product now and put in the program a +2, that's called in physics inversion, the +2 and -2 result is 0. So I nullify the influence of that radiation, which I did. So it took some years to develop a technology where I could give people an alternative. What you said, so what did they do before? Like, let's say the city in Bavaria, right? If they would buy my product called SD950, which is this product here at the bottom. This product here protects you from all kinds of radiation, man-made or natural, including, of course, the radiation of the world, of the Earth radiation. This covers 50 meters in radius, 150 feet in space, in radius. So if you put this in the middle of your house, it completely covers a regular house all the way, so that all these radiation, whether it is geopathic radiation or man-made, have no more impact. You could wear the smallest unit, which I'm wearing now, very small, lightweighted, It covers 3 feet around you, your body 3 feet around you. Then you have the next size, which covers 5 meters, 15 feet around you. If you take this with you in your car, the radiation which your car produces and the geopathic radiation you'll be driving through will be nullified as well. Or the next size, 10 meters, 30 feet, which is good for a one-room studio or an office space. So whether the office space has now radiation or not, man-made or geopathic, doesn't matter anymore. It is nullified. It doesn't exist for your human body as a thread, and the big one for the bigger house. And these products cover much more than just the geopathic radiation. And they cover as well mobile phones, smart meters, monitors, radar radiation, electric cars, solar systems, LEDs, heavy current, all what you're reading here, all these different threats to health are all covered with these products. So you have no more impact on your health and on your body. You just buy them and put them in the house. And talking about cost, depending on the size of these four, they're between $350 and $800. And with a warranty of 10 years, they're warranted for 10 years. Now, you don't need to believe me that they do this. I have engaged the BISA Institute in Austria, which is specialized to scientifically test such kind of products to see whether the claims I or other people make with these products are truly covered or not. So the BISA Institute tested this big plate. They went to a property of a woman. They went to several. I'll take this one particular case now. And all the results you see now in blue are negative, degenerative. And all the results in green represent the state of desirable and normal. So they checked the woman, unprotected, and these were the results: heart, liver, joints, blood circulation, nerve system, colon, skin, lungs, lymph system, kidney, and so on. They tested all these organs and functions, and everything was bad, was degenerative. Then they took my product and put it in their apartment in the house. And after that, everything which was blue and degenerative before was now green. Pro-survival, good. All the same organs, functions. And then they did one more thing. They took this product out of her house to see what happens 2 hours later. Within 2 hours, all her body functions, as they were exposed again, unprotected to radiation, all went bad again, back to the bad condition. And here's the comparison between the two. And once the BISA Institute has done their testings, they issue a certificate confirming that my claims are true and they're scientifically tested. And you can see all these tests on my website, and you can read them all, and they're all there, and you can send me questions and answers. And keep in mind my philosophy that what we are dealing here with is a situation which we believe we can control. We cannot control the digital world. That's not true. And my philosophy that mankind goes on like it does, and it will be extinct because they believe that the laws of nature did not apply to them. We ignore God. We ignore nature. We do not live with nature, but against it. And we think we can do this endlessly without any punishment, without any consequences. How stupid are we? No animal destroys its own life sphere. And if you want to be healthy, my thesis is that your body and mind must be in harmony. They must be in harmony. If they're not in harmony, there is no health. And on my website, you see all those testings, you see many interviews, you see many documents. We could only today walk through it very fast, even if it seemed to you long, but we're just scratching the surface. And I wanted to give you clear data and clear proof what's going on. We're destroying our health with electromagnetic radiation, man-made and nature ones. And yes, we can protect ourselves. My technology is very straightforward, based on quantum physics. There's no question. I'm not looking for victims for my product. I'm not looking for business. My calling is to help this planet, to improve our world, and to give people a chance of a much better, healthier survival, which I can only do because these 5 people here, I quickly want to acknowledge, helped me to find out what I'm doing today. Dr. Meyer zu Schwabe is an unknown doctor in Germany. I went to work with him as an intern for 1 year every day except Christmas and Sundays. For 1 year, I worked with him as an adult. As I was sick, he saved my life, and he taught me things which I'm doing nowadays in my practice as a life and health consultant. Royal Raymond Rife, the man who discovered that every illness has a frequency, and the FDA destroyed him and his business and his machines because it was too cheap how he could solve problems and cancer. Nikola Tesla, of course, totally been abused by his competitors and by mean people. I couldn't do what I do without him. Max Planck, a genius who discovered quantum physics. Without him, my products would not exist because everything I do on quantum physics, and you can only do it on quantum physics. As Burkhard Heim, he taught me how to nullify these frequencies, that they're not harmful to you anymore. And Dr. Masaru Emoto, he taught me about water so much that I could apply it to my technology to deliver you healthy water. That is the end of my presentation. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening to my monologue. I hope I could bring the topics across.
That was fascinating and just curious. If, just say, the government or the city really cared about people, is it possible that if the resources were put in to have the technology to have a bigger one that would reach a bigger space?
Sure.
Or have you figured out that that's the max that you can go?
No. No. Quantum physics knows no max. Quantum physics knows no yesterday, today, tomorrow. Quantum physics does not know difficult or a wall in between or 10 walls in between. When you deal with my cell phone protection, and you have your cell phone protection in your cell phone, and your brother in South Africa has no cell phone protection, and you dial your brother's number in South Africa, and the moment he picks up the phone, my technology travels through the entire space and reaches your brother and protects him as well in that very moment. Quantum physics knows no time, no space. So the core of your question, when I designed my first product, the cell phone protection, people told me, you become filthy rich now, a millionaire, because now it's going to be in every phone. I said, no, it's not going to happen, because then the cell phone companies would admit that they screwed you and they would have endless lawsuits. Okay. Because they know it's dangerous. They know it harms the health. They all know it. They know it. It's known fact, right? But to answer your question in a constructive way, I can apply my technology anywhere over every space. So I could, for example, put my product in every cell tower in the world, and every cell phone call would be healthy. I can cover space endlessly, but of course it's more expensive than, I manufactured the product for an individual to protect your house. Let's say $700-800, right? For 10 years guaranteed. That's the cheapest life insurance you can have. Now, I had to design it that the average person could more or less afford it. $99 for cell phone protection for 5 years. The average person can afford that, right? If I would make solutions, let me say countrywide or continent-wide or worldwide, that would cost a lot more. But who's going to buy it? The average person has no interest to cover people in South Africa. But to cover his own house, his family, he has a natural interest. So I made it available to him, cover your personal health, the health of your kids, grandkids, family for $1,000, $2,000 for the next 10 years, and you're done. But the solution in quantum physics is relatively easy. It takes a bit of time and it takes more money, and but the technology, the basic technology of nullifying is the same, just a bigger space.
You mentioned South Africa, and it was something I was going to just mention. I'm just curious because Michael Tallinger, I remember seeing him. He had devices, and he was saying, "Oh, there's energy going up here, and it just keeps going up, and it goes from one area to the other." And I'm just wondering, are they the water veins that he's picking up on?
Could well be, yes. I don't know the gentleman. I never talked to him. I don't know what he does, but could very well be. And of course, it's missing that people, whoever that is, maybe a good guy, and me just would meet and would talk and would develop together, right? We all work to isolate it. And don't forget that about 99%, to my guess, 99% of all scientists are either paid by a company or by the government. People like me who do everything out of their own power, of their own financial space they have, the possibilities, the chances are very, very, very small. We don't get grants from the government.
Unfortunately. Oh,
And I see even resistance with the average person. Okay. A lot of people listen to this show will not move their butt, will not leave their comfort zone, don't spend $100 on their cell phone to be protected. They rather take the chance to have cancer in a few years. So there's a lot of ignorance there as well, and not leaving the comfort zone couch.
well, I think, as I say, some people say knowledge is power. I say the use of knowledge is power. Now they know the information and they have to make a decision themselves what they want to do for themselves and their family.
Well, my principle is, you have heard that before from me, maybe, that knowledge and wisdom makes no sense if you don't share it. You have to offer it to people. It's then their choice. Do I do something about it? The majority will not. They're just in a comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, Norbert, as always, thoroughly enjoyed it. I know I'll have the show links for all the other ones, but we've got some special ones coming up as well where you've got incredible information. I'm learning a lot, so I know that if I'm learning a lot and I read a lot and I study a lot, that the listeners are as well. And I look forward to having you back. I'll make sure I'll put the website both on the audio and video in the show notes. But thank you very much again, once again, Norbert.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great day there in Europe.
Well, thank you. So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Find everything about me, scan the QR code, go to rycon.com. You find my 6 shows, as well as everything else I'm doing. And if you're looking for virtual assistants, go to va.world. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. And if you're in any Telegram groups or different WhatsApp groups, please share with them because I'm heavily censored and that's the best way for me to get the message out. Until next week, take care.